In today's episode of the Hotelier Huddle, I had such a terrific, really interesting, wildly educational for me conversation with Dr. David Haberlah, who is currently the AI globalisation lead at a major hotel tech company. And we spoke about everything from the different types of artificial intelligent models in hotel tech. And he gave some really interesting perspective on how AI is actually changing the hotel industry and how it might help in future. For anyone who's interested in AI, and I know everyone is, I think you'll really enjoy this chat as much as I did. Dr. David Haberlah, it is so great to see you. And listen, I am so thankful to you for taking the time out to join me in the Hotelier Huddle, because I am well aware how busy you are. And now you're working from Japan this week, yes? Konnichiwa, Haberlah-san. I believe you're in Japan.
Konnichiwa, Shannon-san. It's a real pleasure. I'm super excited to be on your podcast.
Oh, I'm just really, really thankful for you taking the time to do it. So I have so many questions for you on the topic of AI and hotels, and maybe even geology and hotels software, which is one of your many areas of interest and study. I also went out to the people, the subscribers of this podcast, and I asked them what I should ask you, and they've sent in a few too. I'll get to those in a bit. So before I launch into your vast insights, let me please, for the people who may not already know, provide just a quick rundown of your areas of study and professional experience so far, if I may. So make sure I get this right. Tell me if I miss any important ones. Director of Marketing and Product Development, Readable English out of Indianapolis, USA. And I've known you for a few years. I actually never knew that until I started researching your research background. So that's a new one. Head of Product Mathematics at 3P Learning. Classroom teacher, Queensland Department of Education. Vast, impressive academic career so far includes MBA, Doctor of Philosophy, PhD, Geology and Geophysics. I mean, wow. Master of Teaching Elementary Education and Teaching, Master of Science, Geography, University of Berlin, Master of Science, Geography, University of Kiel. Wow. And currently, you're the AI globalization lead at SiteMinder for the last 3 years, which, by the way, is how you qualify as a member of the Hotelier tribe, because you're building products and building engineers and building the smarts and AI around products for hoteliers. So that's how you qualify as a member of the tribe. Have I got all that right?
Yeah, it took me a while to qualify, to take a few detours, and looking at all of these different things I've done in life, it makes me feel old. But
I think you're just getting started.
Yeah, I think so too, right? And what a great industry to be working in.
Yes, I mean, I stumbled in it a few decades ago, and I've just never left. So that's what happens. So, Dr. Haberlah, you've taught elementary school students, you've decoded geological mysteries, and now you're teaching hotels how to speak artificial intelligence. So, which is harder? Explaining fractions to third graders or explaining software as a service to hoteliers?
Look, I think if you're in the front of a classroom, especially younger students, third graders, and these would have been Indigenous students up in Northern Queensland, they are a tough crowd, right? So they actually teach you one thing. If you're not talking their language, if you're not actually addressing something that is, fulfilling addressing their problems or pain points or something they want to get out of this, you're not going to get their attention for more than 5 seconds. And I think This is actually the same thing for good reasons for hoteliers, right? So you can directly kind of transfer these skills and say, look, we need to actually talk about your problems, the things that you want to get out of the solution, and the things that are missing in our solution maybe as well, right? Because otherwise, you lost them. And I think this is what my students taught me. And I think it's very transferable in terms of the technology that we can build and the interactions you have with your customers.
It's so wise. And that's why you're so good at what you do. It's so wise. And, it reminds me that the best success I've had since I left the world where I had my own hotels and now I'm in this world of consulting and teaching and training in hotel space. The best success I have is when I try and listen and learn a lot from the customer, from the hoteliers first, before I try and teach anything. And I go into a hotel and I just immerse myself in their environment, and I just watch and I learn and I observe and I see what I can learn first before I try and teach anything. And that sounds like your approach as well, only at a very different level. So I take it geology and rocks are probably easier to predict than hotel guests. But if AI can predict hotel guest preferences, which I know it can it also predict when someone's going to steal all the towels? Does it work like that?
Look, I mean, first of all, I should say that predicting rocks is actually a hard problem because, I mean, if you think about the oil and gas industry, reservoir characterization, the mining industry, flow sheets, and all of that, is like, how do you predict what you're actually going to, drill into a mine, extract, and so on? These are billion-dollar problems every year, and some of the most advanced software that I've ever worked with and developed as a product manager in the past is actually on that space, on that topic. It's really, really hard. In comparison, predicting, human preferences is actually sounds easy. It's not always easy, of course. And that is primarily because it's difficult to get the data points in order to do the prediction, right? You know, if you've got a prospect or a potential customer coming in, like, what do you actually know about this customer? And I think, to be honest, we haven't really scratched the surface in order to take, prior customer interactions in order to, use that data in order to do predictive modeling at all. Like, we just sit on these emails and it's all of these unstructured data that suddenly in the age of AI becomes really, really valuable. And you can do a lot more than would have been possible in the past by applying models that go beyond the traditional machine learning in order to look at sentiments or keywords and really, understanding, like, what are these customers going to be like? What would they like to how can we upsell them potentially? Like, what are potential issues? Like, are they going to steal my towels? Like, am I going to, use my secondhand old towels here, or remove the television?
So, and I wonder from your perspective, if we think about AI sort of at a helicopter or, universal way up here view, on a scale of something like a helpful butler to a know-it-all teenager, where does AI currently sit in terms of personality in your view?
I think this is a really good question, right? Because as someone who's working with all of the models all of the time,
yes.
I know they all have very different personalities. And some companies, say, for example, Anthropic with the Claude models, they have UX designers that are dedicating themselves to define the personality they want to the AI to develop or kind of grow, right? Because you can't, it's a non-deterministic system. So you kind of need to grow the personality from the core, from what they would call constitutional AI and so on. And then it's really hard to change a personality at a later stage. And I think some companies tried. And I think a funny example would be Grok, which would be your teenagers know it all. Like, it's supposed to be funny and edgy, but it then at one stage called itself the Mega Hitler and just went completely crazy, right?
Went nuts.
And that
Lost its mind.
Went nuts. Lost its mind, and you basically, it became really difficult to get that model to kind of perform reasonably, especially within a business context. Whereas I think the opposite example of a really helpful, knowledgeable butler that knows when to shut up as well might be Claude, which I think within the business context, the Sonnet 4.5 model that was released 2 weeks ago is exceptionally good at being, knowledgeable, and you can set it up with a few filters to be concise if you prefer that. You can also make it Socratic. So coming back from education, for example, you might not want it to tell you all the answer, but help you with the thinking process. So it's not going to give you the answers, but it gives you the steps to help think this through on your own end and be your kind of partner, a tutor in that space, right? So I think all of these models have very, very different, are starting to develop very different personalities, even within a company, different models, different generations of models. And so it's absolutely worth to define what's the right kind of personality I want to bring into my business, for my staff, or for interactions with customers and so on. It's certainly an area that is as important as in the past it used to be about how do I design the interface, the web interface for my guests or the software or so on.
What do you think is the biggest misconception that hoteliers have about artificial intelligence replacing jobs in hospitality? And is there anything that you wish hoteliers understood about how AI will actually change the industry?
I think that's a deep question. I mean, first of all, hospitality industry is about connections. It's a fundamentally a service for you, from humans for humans, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
that's when we get the best experience out of it. So to some extent, the technology side that kind of crept in. I think we're both old enough to know that it used to be just a spreadsheet, right? And that's it. And that can be depending on the size of your business, could have been done on a piece of paper as well, or a ledger
Yes.
book, or sometimes you still see these in some of the countries.
And still is in
And
some hotels, may I add, still is.
still is. And to some extent, you really want to abstract that away, right? Because I believe over the last 20 years in particular, we became quite obsessed with micromanaging computers. So a lot of part of our professional life is in front of a screen, clicking on buttons, inputting data, outputting data, and like every step is a step that requires human attention in order to make the computer or the system do what we want it to do. And I think the promise of AI is that we can kind of abstract that away again, so that the interface becomes more human. We can actually start talking to it. We can make it, get it to do all of the data crunching, whatever in the background. We can get it to interface, even if we want to look at the screen in a way that is most useful for us. So we don't need to learn new software interfaces across multiple systems and
All the
move data
time,
around and
over
so
and
on.
over.
So agentic systems that are emerging or the capabilities, it's really about connecting the dots in the background and just really getting you back to focus on what matters most and what you would actually enjoy doing in your life. So that is the
Yes.
hope. So to some extent I think that is the hospitality industry is only going to be a boon for the hospitality industry, and I think for most of the roles, even if they're quite technical roles today.
So, how do you teach AI or LLMs, large language models, that guest service, hotel service, hospitality means very different things in Tokyo versus Texas, for instance?
Yeah. I think this is a very important question that we're going to tackle more moving forward because, like in the really early baby steps we took, effectively there's just a few big models, mainly trained on internet data, which is mainly like often just the Western corpus of internet data. So there's very little localization in terms of cultural preferences and so on in that corpus. So when I say corpus, it's the body of work that you use to train your models, right? I think that is shifting because first of all, like it's interesting to see, for example, that there's like really competitive big models coming out of China. They are training on a different corpus. They are training on the corpus behind the Chinese firewall, right? So it's always interesting to
Of course.
see how the responses are coming out there because actually it's trained on somewhat different data, and some would say on both data because they'll just basically take the Western data set into account as well. But on top of that, you have what is called reinforcement learning by human feedback. And so in order to make these models any good at reasoning through and behaving properly, there's a ton of human work behind the scenes in order to kind of look at the initial answers and train them in terms of what is a good answer, what is a bad answer, and so on. That is something that most people don't know, but it has a lot of human work that goes into it. And I can see when it comes to cultural nuances that this is the next frontier where we really want to develop these what some people call sovereign AI systems that are actually owned by countries or by cultures and so on, and represent them because the current systems are very Western centric. And I mean, you just look at the big AI companies, it's a very, very small subset of the human
Yes.
experience and philosophy and all
Yes.
of that, even though the corpus is bigger. I think the real frontier will be when we are getting towards what is called embodied AI, which is effectively AI in a real world, like through robotic systems or so on, that can interact and actually see things for its own, like through its own sensors, understand the reality of physics and all of these things. But within the context of hotels, it will actually be able to follow guests, actually see what that experience looks like, what beds look like, check in everything, because that is not
Yes.
necessarily actually written down in a way that is consumable currently. So there's a lot of gaps that we take for granted because nobody's writing about this, and that information is lacking from the systems today. So once, which I believe will be early next year, we get some of these systems on the ground. That's when we get the real nuances, and they become like much more knowledgeable about the things that actually matter that have never been written down.
It reminds me of, in the early days of booking engines and channel managers, and even some to this day have things like templates for building all of your room types to set up a new hotel. And there might be templates that have, here's where you put your king beds, here's where you put your queen beds. But that doesn't work for hotels in China because they don't have king beds and queen beds. They don't have kings and queens. They have emperors and empresses. So for hotels in China, that doesn't necessarily work. We need a different template. So it's sort of like an expanded, very different, profound, bigger version of that, I think, if I've got it right.
Yeah, and also like if you think about it, because that's actually an interesting topic. Like as we work with computers and these kind of rigid deterministic systems today, like you will have to call a bed, a certain term, and a room type a certain term, and a rate a certain term, and we know that very well. Like we worked on this together, Shannon, right?
Yes.
So it's really, and you're limiting your options. You're basically applying a filter or attenuation, right? And as a result, you never have a perfect description or fully personalized description or something that really reflects the reality in a way that is unique to the hotel and so on. And I can see that this, like now that we can personalize the experience through these systems that can actually work with all of this data on a personal level with you, right? That we can open this up and we can call things the way we wanted to call it. And in the background, it's ultimately just the dimension and the hardness and whatever of the mattress, right? That is there. And we can speak the language of every single customer and every single hotel in very unique ways that wouldn't have been possible today. So again, there's a real opportunities that we're just kind of starting to imagine in a way.
Yes. And so in that way, to me, it sounds already that AI, as it relates to hotel and hotel products and hotel software, that it won't just continue to be generically helpful everywhere on Earth, but start to develop, for lack of a better technical term, regional accents and regional nuance. And not just regional in terms of where the hotel is, but where the hotel's customers are coming from, which are very different things, again, in terms of destination, market, and source of origin, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's like, I'm always interested to see, like, as I mentioned, Chinese models. There's also European models being developed, like Mistral is an example. Like, what's the difference? How are they actually interacting with you? Because again, there's differences on the corpus and so on. And I believe, if anything, models are getting cheaper. Building models are like, at least medium-sized models or models that could actually run on your computer are being developed as we speak. And so there's a huge opportunity for diversity. The at the beginning of a Cambrian explosion, if you want to, not just in terms of innovation, but also diversity of models to interact with. And so I think these regional accents and experiences and the creativity that we can also bring into this as hoteliers, as artists, as whatever it is, we're just about to start.
Well, and again, the creativity part is where the humans continue to be completely important and completely required and completely mission critical in the whole process. And, I keep hearing from hotel managers that their biggest AI fear that keeps them up at night is employees uploading data, guest details, credit card payment info, to AI platforms to get help with jobs to be done. Because front desk and reservations agents all across the land, all across Earth in hotels, they're using AI, mostly ChatGPT, but a few different types of apps for everything. I mean, they're using AI for so many things, for everything in hotels. So is there advice from your perspective that we can give to hoteliers on this, other than using common sense and not uploading reservation details or details that, files that clearly have guest details or credit card details or things we shouldn't be uploading to AI? Other than common sense, Is there any, advice that you can give to hoteliers on that element?
Yeah, I think first of all, very simply, I mean, your employees are doing their jobs in the best possible way. That's actually something you
Yes.
want to encourage. So
Yes.
that seems to be like a failure in providing them with the right tools. If they're using their own personal ChatGPT subscription or even free tiers, where there's definitely, you're basically loading up your data. And I don't think you can have policies that say don't upload PII data or whatever, but this is not a very secure approach, right? You really want to be on an enterprise grade system that
Right.
is stripping these out and also not training its models. And they are readily available. You can purchase these for your employees. I would definitely work with your employees and see what are the preferred tools, because as we just discussed, all of these have different flavors, capabilities, and so on. Some are amazing at crunching data, right? Like the Anthropic models. Others are better at formulating emails, right? ChatGPT 5, for example, or doing translations, or like there's really horses for courses, right?
Yeah.
And I would work with your employees to see like what are the preferred models, provide choice of enterprise grade systems. So that means you just basically need to pay a $60 subscription, which in the scheme of things of what you probably have to pay your employee is not a lot, right? And you can even like depending on be smart and have shared accounts, or like you can get a little bit smart if you're really trying to be tight on your budget. But like one thing you don't want to do is not provide your employees with the right AI tools to do their job, because they're going to get the job done anyway.
Exactly.
I think down the line, what we'll see is that a lot of these models are getting really, really good to the point where you can start running open source models on your computer. It's called edge computing. So I can see in a future where there's data you really don't want to upload into the cloud in any form, right? Even if
Yes.
because you ultimately have to trust the provider, and there are ways that these models can be exploited, as we know, and it's a kind of ongoing battle, similar
Yes.
to what we've done in the past anyway. We always use CRMs, the data is in the cloud, and these systems get hacked, like we know that. So it's not different from that at all. But having said that, if you really, really are very security and privacy focused, there's an opportunity to really get state-of-the-art computers and actually run these models on device, so there's no need to transfer any data into the cloud. I mean, that seems to be a bit extreme, but I mean, I think that is something that we probably see a lot more common in the next couple of years.
Interesting. That's really helpful. And I do see that, some of the simple things, again, among many of the things I see hotel front desk and reservation staff in particular using AI apps to do, is things like translating languages to write a confirmation or to come up with a marketing campaign. And I think we're getting much better about double and triple checking and editing things before we just send it out when we've asked for a translation. But do you believe that AI can perfectly translate not just languages, but also cultural expectations in the context of hotel software services?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So first of all, it kind of depends on the context you provide to the model, like context building. And if you just have a few lines of, say, an email that you want to translate without the context, without who the guest is or prior conversation or any of that, it's going to be limited. It will perform a translation. These translations are actually really, really good, especially compared to prior standards, right? When you're not necessarily a native speaker in both or multiple languages. And but if you provide more detail, it will know how to phrase things really, really well. So it's about building context, and you need the right tools again for it. So ideally, systems that will connect all of these things, as well as I think your staff needs to be trained in this. And what I can see now is that as we are moving more to where the input is voice or video and voice, most of the nuances in our conversation is actually, the features, mimics. Like you can tell if somebody is, happy or unhappy and all of that.
Yes.
Expressions of your face and so on, and your gestures and all of that, and the tone of voice. And I think like when we look at sentiment that's how we convey it, less through language. And so the written word is very, very limited in that sense. So as we are moving towards interacting with our guests via video, voice, whether it is intermediated through a bot first or directly with a bot on the call, we can get much better feedback and guidance in order to craft the messages and experiences around that. And again, it's an area that is just evolving, but I think like we've been extremely limited in the past in how we're doing things, and we can do it much, much better with these tools.
If AI could have one superpower to improve global hotel experiences, David Haberlah, what would you give it?
Oh dear. I think, again, with AI being about human experiences, like from my background, even as a teacher, right, it's about the match. Like you need to be the right match as a teacher with the students and so on. So how do you create the perfect match by attracting the guests that would really enjoy your hotel, whatever it is? Could be like a cheap budget hotel and so on. That's completely fine because some guests are really looking for that, right? Or being in the right location, which can be very noisy, but they're like the party crowd. Or do you have a multitude of different guests and needs, or pain and gain points, like, and you've got hotels that can deliver to all of these different things. But if you mismatch, you get unhappy guests that might be complaining or providing you bad feedback and all of these things. Or you might not attract, like if you're advertising on the wrong channels, you might not even attract the right guests, right? You're wondering why you're not getting the foot traffic. So I think like solving that problem in terms of matching, really personalizing the discovery process, and then making the best matches, right? In terms of the budget, in terms of like where to advertise, the right channel, and so on. That is a hard problem that is worth solving.
I love that, and I so agree.
AI is really in the space to be able to do that, right?
Yeah, for sure. Because as humans, and even some revenue management systems aren't quite good yet, although the AI infused revenue management systems are getting better at being able to identify what you just described in terms of market segmentation and price and channel and source of business, and matching those together. And, as humans, we're not always very good at even identifying that the same human guest can behave very differently and have very different preferences depending on when she's traveling. I mean, when I travel for business, I might have a very different price threshold versus when I'm traveling for leisure. I mean, when you recently went to Europe, if someone else was paying, you probably wanted a very different kind of hotel experience. Whereas when David Haberlah is then in Japan on work or business or pleasure or bleisure, different again. And AI models are much better at identifying that and managing it and matching it than we are. Isn't that right?
Yeah. And exactly. And it's not, it really depends on the circumstances. So like 2 weeks ago, I was traveling with the family in Yakushima Island, and we really wanted to have a bigger house in a really scenic location and make like real use of the space. And we needed a parking and all of these different things, right? Whereas now, as I'm in Tokyo, just working, like I want to have a spot with great Wi-Fi and a bit of a community around me there, because I'm alone here. So I really want to be in a place where I can meet people that are also here for business and locals, right? So it really changes for every single booking that I do, and I think this is something where personalized agents interacting with hotel agents will really help to make better matches moving forward.
Yes, and so on that, with your PhD background and role in AI strategy, how do you bridge that gap between what AI can theoretically do and what actually makes business sense for hotels to implement right now?
Okay. So this is interesting because I think what AI can theoretically do even today, even if we wouldn't see any progress, which is highly unlikely considering the current trajectory and in particular the investments, the billions and billions, if not trillions of investments in the space, I think we are very much underutilizing AI in any business context, within companies, within hotels and so on, because we are not set up to feed it the right relevant data at every point in time. It's a model that is like a blind man, right? It's just responding to what you input, which is just a few lines of text generally, right? Or data. but their data might be, not very clean, not very set up properly. And that applies to both structured data, like spreadsheets and so on, but also unstructured data, like prior conversations you had with guests and so on. So I think what everyone can do now in order to set themselves up for an AI-driven future that we all want to achieve, right, is really sit down, look at what is the unique data that we're sitting on that really matters for whatever experience I want to deliver, clean that up, make that available through APIs, MCPs. I mean, there's different protocols emerging, and being ready, right? And starting to test it, and also train up your employees. That there's a massive human uplift that needs to go into this. And there are tools that will help us, but ultimately we've got at least a couple of years in order to really set ourselves up for success here. And without building your knowledge base and cleaning it up, you will not achieve that like times X uplift, and you're just not gonna deliver a good experience. So yeah, that is basically my advice today, right? The systems theoretically could already do so much more for you, but without cleaning up the house, preparing it, and bringing in the right tools, integrations, enterprise search, whatever it is, you're not going to be in a position to really harness that.
Excellent advice. Absolutely excellent. What's the software equivalent of, I'll call it lost in translation, when connecting to, for instance, a German PMS to an Australian channel manager to a Japanese payment gateway?
Yeah, so the current hospitality tech is, very fragmented, right? And you also have a lot of systems, like a lot of the PMS systems are like cottage industries, like for good reasons, right? You got your local legislation and all of these things to be taken into account. But as a result, none of it is necessarily best of breed. And none is set up to perfectly communicate. There is no standards and so on. So as a result, when you talk about loss in translation, ultimately these systems are communicating via APIs. So there's certain pieces of information that are going to be transmitted. There's two problems. The first is one of information attenuation, which we already discussed. So there's so much more rich information that needs to be dumped down into these strict categories for these computers to start communicating with each other in a deterministic ways, right? So to populate the fields and so on. So we lose a lot of the nuances and a lot of the rich data that is actually being collected, if it's being collected. That's another thing. Like, are we really collecting everything we can, right? If it's collected. But like, in terms of loss in translation, that is a bottleneck that is really concerning. And I think with some of the new protocols like MCP, there's opportunities for agentic systems and AI to communicate with each other that don't require that very strict format and can work with more messy data, which is more qualitative and richer data. So I think that is really an area of opportunity. An area of concern is that our interactions with any data, websites, whatever, is going to be disintermediated. So effectively, we are talking to AI to do stuff for us. And we can see that now starting in search, right? When we do search, generally we will look at an overview from Google or Perplexity, and we might or might not go to an individual websites because ultimately we are asking questions to which we want to get answers. And even if we get recommendations on, say, a travel itinerary or what to book or where to go, suddenly this is not coming from a website written by a human. Like most websites are arguably in 2025 are not actually even written by humans anymore, right? But it's like there's not like at least one, if not multiple levels of AI disintermediation in it. And so like that is a concern because it's not very transparent, right? It's a black box. We don't know if it's very, very good. So how do we, make sure that we are connecting to the sources of information? And I think we will set a premium on human experience and human communication as a result. And I think, again, an area where you can differentiate yourselves by the quality and richness of the information that you bring to the table as a hotelier, right? And that could be a database that is set up for agents and models to be trained on, because ultimately it's going to refer back to you. Like in one way or
Yes.
another, your name is going to be there, right? But it has access to that rich information because AI loves information, right? These models are hungry. So if you
Yes.
provide it in the right format and like lots of detail and actually, question answer format and real stuff, that comes as a premium. So that is one way of being relevant in that disintermediated future moving forward.
That leads me to a couple of questions. I did actually, in anticipation of talking with you today on the podcast, I put out to the subscribers of this podcast, what should I ask him? What should I ask the AI guru expert about AI and hotels? And unsurprisingly, one of the most common questions was one asked by, this was asked by a lot of people, but this one in particular was asked by Andrew Taylor, who's in hotel design and development, interestingly enough. And he's asked, I'm keen to hear about AI platforms such as chat, etc., as a distribution system in their own right, bypassing the OTAs. And that was the most common question that I got asked to ask you, which alludes to what you were just describing, doesn't it?
Yes, exactly. So I think the big foundation model companies like OpenAI with ChatGPT, like Anthropic with Claude, like X with Grok, and so on. Meta is starting to make a big debut, and there's a few other big players coming in. Of course, we've got international players, we've got the Chinese ones, and so on. They are all positioning themselves to become an operating system. So initially, they're trying to be our browser, right? And we can start seeing that happening. Like think about Perplexity, for example. But ultimately, it's going to be your operating system. So you have that one interface in order to do things. So all of the services, capabilities that software provides are just going to be, basically in the backend through MCP. And so you really want to make sure that that you play an important role in that, because like your personalized agents can be on there 24/7 looking for just the right deal at just the right price. And I think we
Yes.
will see changes in our behavior because like previously and there's going to be a transition period for many years for sure, right? But like everything
Sure.
was optimized in terms of marketing for human eyeballs and also like attention and so on. So effectively, like you really want to get, like if I would be an OTA, I really want to get the customer to download my app because there's only so many apps I download. And if I download, say, Expedia or Booking.com or Go or whatever, that's going to be my go-to place, right? Because I've already downloaded it. I had to set it up. So there's a lot of kind of costs and there's also switching costs. And yeah,
Right.
and then of course they'll try to keep you in there, like providing better deals, and it becomes a channel in its own right. But that has been set up for humans. So it's going to be interesting, and I don't think we've got all of the answers here, how that will play out in a more agentic future where like all of that goes away. I'm not going to actually download an app to do my booking. Or maybe we are, like, I don't know. I mean, there might be differences. I think Airbnb might be one exception here, right? Because it's a very kind of unique way.
Sure.
But like these OTAs, I think their primary focus will now be playing with these agentic systems. And we can see that OpenAI is now collaborating with Expedia, for example.
Yes, we
And
see that
so if
already.
yeah, that I think that was announced last week, right? Only last week. And Perplexity has its own direct channels and so on. And what we see here is that if I'm looking for, like, I need to book a hotel room in Tokyo, and it knows something about me, or I might specify what I actually want and for what reason, it will go on, call a few of these MCP services that it needs to be trustworthy, needs to provide detailed information, like and assets, like images and all of that stuff, in order to serve the user again, right? And it will come back with, here's a list of things, and I can then monitor it, or I can just say click, and it will pay it. And with the release of the A2P protocol, which supports payments by agents, so that is something that all of the big companies from PayPal, Visa, MasterCard, and all signed up to this protocol, I think a month ago, that specifies how an agent on your behalf can actually make a payment and a booking and all of these things, like in a
Right.
auditable, secure way, which was a missing piece. We can now have these agents where we say, look, have a look for the next 2 weeks. If something really good comes up, like in the moment something comes up, right, just book it for me. Like in the moment you get the famous Taylor Swift tickets are coming out, like it's set to go, and it will just on my behalf try to arrange this. I don't have to be involved anymore, right? So that's another thing. Whereas at this point, we're really thinking, it's still going to be a human actively searching and then clicking. I don't think so. I think that will go away. Like we have a conversation in the morning, and in the evening, I get an update of what has been booked, and again, it will be interesting to see what does that mean. Like, what are the preferences in this agentic booking way? Is it like cancellation on the same day because we know the user is not looking at it, but just getting a list of options in the evening and then picking it from there? Like, I think we need to be on the ball here. Like, I don't want to provide like any hard answers because we don't know. I don't know, but it's fundamentally changing. So how do we make this work for agentic AI systems rather than human eyeballs? And what are the options and the flexibilities and the protocols that we really need to play to in order to position ourselves?
You've been working with hoteliers now for quite some time. I'm curious, is there one universal truth about hoteliers worldwide that your favorite AI has discovered through software usage patterns?
Look, I know this question because you sent it through, so I couldn't stop myself and actually checking it out and asking a few models, right? Because I don't know, like tell the models. So my favorite AI for most of the work, professional work, would be Claude 4.5 at the moment. And it said, hoteliers use technology to confirm their instincts, not to discover insights. Revenue management remains an emotional decision wrapped in data justification, which I found a bit, I was like, well, okay, what are you telling me here? So I don't know. That is a very interesting response by a non-sycophantic model. Basically starting, look, I mean, what's the baseline here? Like, are we already doing the best, or are we open to kind of question ourselves in the way that we've been working in the past? That's what I take from it. So I really like that. ChatGPT 5 said hoteliers want technology that gives them control without taking away the personal touch that defines hospitality, which I think is very fair, right? I fully agree with that. Then we have Supergrok 4, which is the one by Elon Musk and X. It's more snappy. It says hoteliers everywhere treat software like a magic wand, one tap and your room's 20% pricier. So it's like, it's speaking... True. Yeah, it's you can tell again the personality here is that's a very it's a very much an X answer to it, and there's truth in it as well. Like we really want to optimize our distribution, our pricing, and so on, and that is the role, right? That's a universal truth in a way. Like I'll finish with two more if you don't mind.
Please.
So there's the Mistral model, I think it was 3.2, which comes out of France or Europe, which is always an interesting perspective. So it says hoteliers only adopt technology that directly saves time or increases revenue. And again, that's a universal truth. Like we're not into technology for the sake of technology. And I think especially in some of the smaller businesses and so on, it's like there's a bit of a reluctance to take on that work. And it speaks to what we've been discussing. Like we don't actually want to spend our time with technology. We want to spend our time with guests, right? I think it's a good insight, a very European insight in a way. Yes. And finally, I had to run it through DeepSeek 3.2. And it says the hotelier's primary driver is not revenue or occupancy. It is the resolution of friction that disrupts their workflows, annoys their guests, consumes their time. So it's that focus on like making it a pleasurable experiences. So maybe it's got a bit of an Asian tint to it, but again, like very good answers.
Interesting.
And it speaks to it like you need to have a diversity of models if you have some real deep questions that you want to get answered, or support your staff to have access to different models because you get different things out of it.
Yes, and I'm curious, just to clarify, you put the same exact prompt into 5 different AI models.
Identical.
Right? And what was that prompt?
Oh, it was the one that you sent me. So the question, is there one universal truth about hoteliers worldwide that your favorite preferred AI has discovered through software usage patterns? So what I did, I was removing that your favorite preferred AI and I just said that you. So it's just speaking to the model.
So same exact prompt into 5 different AI models and 5 very different but equally interesting and truthful responses. Yeah.
and
I love that.
culturally nuanced. So you can already see like what we've been discussing, how different these models are and how that matters within the context of hospitality.
Okay, irony alert. I went into my own Claude application and I put the following prompt in, and I'll tell you what the response was. My prompt was, write the best question to ask the AI globalization lead at a hotel tech company for an audience of hospitality industry enthusiasts and personnel who are listening to a podcast to be informed and entertained. That was the prompt. And Claude said, this is the question I should ask you. Ready? You have a bird's eye view of AI adoption across thousands of hotels globally. What's the most surprising way you've seen a hotel use AI that completely changed how their guests experience their hospitality? That was what Claude said I should ask you.
Right, yeah. Claude always asking the tough questions, right? And I think we're really just starting to use AI in the hospitality industry. So there are some interesting things emerging. If you go to the conferences that I know you're also presenting at, I think the interaction with the guests before the guests arrive, to me, is the most interesting. And I think at this point in time, there's a focus on like saving time, like not having to write emails and this kind of thing. And I think it's a wasted opportunity. So I see some players starting to emerge that actually look at this rich interaction in order to kind of personalize the experience when guests arrive. Or providing them based on the interaction with the right types of rooms or whatever it is. And I think being open to look at an ongoing conversation to make very last minute decisions in this space, if possible, of course. And you need to have the right systems in place to do that. A platform that actually supports you to have that flexibility is I think, at this point in time, probably one of the more innovative and interesting approach. And I think has huge potential.
I love that. So back to my questions now, and I've got just a few more before I let you go. Back to your Tokyo day. In your opinion, if AI could solve one global hotel software challenge overnight, what do you think would have the biggest impact on the industry?
Yeah, as we discussed, the problem is that our data is locked in and you've got a very fragmented system. So I think anything that will help us to liberate that data and actually make it useful as context is really important. And I understand that we have, like, there's multiple systems in this chain, like from your often small PMS, like I compared it a bit to a cottage industry sometimes because it's very small kind of software vendors, down to like how do you kind of migrate this? Like, I see the biggest potential of trying to bring your data together. And that could be through a professional platform like SiteMiner, for example, where you really want to sit and bring all of these different pieces together so that you can actually make it work. Because otherwise, as we discussed, you'll have these bottlenecks, and that makes it a lot harder and you're not going to get the best experience out of it.
I love that. So you're going to go ahead and go solve that overnight for us then, right? Is that what I heard you say? I think that's what I heard you say. You're going to go solve that overnight. Good, thanks.
As you know, Shannon, because we worked on Dynamic Revenue Plus together, right?
We did.
None of these things are being solved overnight. These are lengthy processes, very painful, and it will take a lot of time, especially when you're implementing machine learning models and AI to really train these models, make them work, test them, and so on. In ways that they are delivering against the benchmarks and they're secure and all of that. So nothing overnight, but certainly a problem well worth really investing in and working on. And I think it takes two sides, right? It's the software industry, like it's the work we do, for example, at SiteMinder. But it's also like on the hotel side, like making sure that the data is actually being collected and made available and all of that. So it needs to go hand in hand.
Yes, that's excellent. What AI tool or application should hoteliers stop implementing right now that most aren't? And what AI trend should hotels, sorry, I'm going to ask that question again. Let me try that again. Sure. What AI tool or application should hoteliers be implementing right now that most are not implementing right now? And what AI trend should hotel managers stop worrying about?
Okay. Well, I think these are two quite different things. Like, I think when I look at like technology and what it can solve for hoteliers, it's two areas. It's distribution and it's pricing, right? Making sure that you connect with your right customers, as we discussed, and that
Yes.
you can actually be discovered and discovered at the right price, and that will depend on a lot of complex variables, like in environmental variables, in terms of what is actually happening around my hotel, like why are guests coming, from where are they coming. And so when we've been working on the SiteMinder Insights product and developed a Dynamic Revenue Plus, that is one of the areas, at least on the pricing side, that we were focusing on. Like, how do we actually capture all of this rich data that is very specific to your property and what is happening around it and in your market and among your competitors and peers and like source markets. And there's so many different components coming together that really need to be evaluated. And that is a problem worth working on. I think that's a huge opportunity. And it will require scale, and it will require, to make some strategic decisions on the hotelier side. I think in terms of stop worrying, like everyone is worrying about AI taking in jobs, right?
Yes.
And my answer to that is it's not, because humans always found jobs. Like, I think we're both old enough to understand that a lot of the jobs we're currently doing and the way we're currently interacting wouldn't have been possible or even dreamt about like 10, 20 years ago, right?
So true.
So, a product manager would have been, as I started in product manager on hardware, it was very, very different to what I've been doing on software now, and now with data products. Like, it is emerging. So my advice here really is make sure that you understand that our roles are evolving and they're becoming bigger and richer, right? And that's a good thing.
That's the key.
And
that's the key.
That is key. And also that you get your people on board. You have to show leadership. And because every change is not something that humans generally thrive in. I mean, there's others, like I personally thrive with change. That's why I'm in my role. But yes, I fully appreciate and understand that this is not necessarily the natural kind of reaction to like uncertainty and so on. But like my approach then would be, bring your people on the journey. It's as a leader in your space, as a hotelier, as a manager, you have to really provide your people the vision and the tools and the training to get them on board, that they will grow together with the space, right? Because if you're not, then you're really doing them injustice in a way, and you're not going to get the business outcomes you want.
Such sage advice, and I really agree. And it occurs to me, when photography was first invented, you can imagine that portrait artists everywhere were fearing, oh, that's the end of art. I'll never have a job again. There'll never be anything more to do. That'll be the end of portrait painting and the end of art. But it wasn't. We found other ways to use art, and we found other things for painters to do. And it wasn't the end of art at all. In fact, it was the beginning of new forms of art. So it's always the beginning of new things, isn't it?
And it's always circular as well, right? I think like photography, as we now have these amazing models that are coming out, and I've actually had so much fun in Tokyo over the weekend, appropriating some of the amazing art and animating them using an Imagine model from Grok. And it's just amazing, because you can kind of interact in new ways and enjoy art as a consumer that is a little bit more active. But I'm also I thought like one thing that won't go away is that, art that is physical is increasing in value. Like suddenly, digital photography is decreasing in value, and we are making a full circle again, where portrait painting and that process of sitting and somebody really taking the time and painting, and it just becomes very personalized and human, is suddenly getting a premium. So I can see why a lot of artists are worrying, but for me, it's actually the false way to look at it. I think art is having a revival, if anything. And the same for music industry. Like, yes, we have digital music, and yes, AI can generate a lot of amazing, great music. Everyone can create their own songs now, and it's fantastic. But at the same time, I think there's a premium now on actually seeing live performances, which might not always be perfect, and actually interacting with the artists and so on.
Of course.
And I see this as a positive way.
One more question, if I may. I always like to wrap up every single Hotelier Huddle podcast with a toast. If you are raising a glass of sake today in Tokyo, David, if you're raising a glass of sake and a toast to hoteliers and AI apps everywhere, what is your toast?
My toast is, I think, embrace embrace an exciting future. I think that is it. Like, I really believe the period of time that we go through is very disruptive, but it is the most exciting that we ever had in terms of humanity. And there's many opportunities with intelligence that is, like some said, too cheap to meter. Like, why would we not want to bring that into our world? We have so many problems, challenges, and opportunities that will benefit from that additional intelligence. And as long as we are the curator of it, and we're in charge, and we apply taste and all of these things, I think it's such an exciting future. So embrace that.
I agree, and I love that. Thank you very much, Dr. David Haberlah, for joining the Hotelier podcast today. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Good to see you.
Very good to see you, Shannon.
Thank you so much.
Bye.